No disintegrations.
As you wish.
Welcome back to Propology 101, and I just received a package, and this package gets me very excited because it goes to a current project I have. I'm going to pull this out real quick. I'm going to remove this because we're going to be talking about this part here in a second anyway. I'm going to remove the end cap also. And no, we are not going to be talking about lightsabers. What we are going to be talking about is this guy. We're going to be talking about Boba Fett's EE-3 from Empire Strikes Back. What this is a World War I Webley & Scott flare gun. Now, it's pretty cool. I mean, just by itself, this is a pretty cool looking piece. Now, the Webley & Scott was pretty much only made during World War I period. And I don't think they even made a whole lot of these. Trust me, I know I've been looking to purchase a real one and couldn't find one that I could afford. I went ahead and made my own, and this is my master for my molds. The one used in Empire Strikes Back is a real Webley & Scott. It's a rental. And a very fun little detail is it has armory marks on the buttstock that you can actually see if you know where to look and know when to look during the movie. You will see there is a 6 and a 9. They're covered up by greebles, but there's enough there to know it's a 6 and a 9. And that is an armory marking for cataloging the flare gun. It was fitted with a 4x20 scope made in Japan. Now, these scopes, there are threads upon threads upon threads about these scopes, and I'm not going to go into the weeds on this scope. There are so many different manufacturers. I'm pretty sure no one knows exactly what manufacturer or what brand was used, but they all came from Japan. They're pretty much all the same, and they're very hard to find these days also. So for me, I am going to be using a air rifle or BB gun version, but I'm going to be changing a few things. I'm going to be using the proper scope rings, which is what you need to look for on these. I'm going to be creating dust caps that will screw onto these scopes. This is a flat top dust cap, and the dust caps that are correct for this blaster are cone shaped. Also, on the eyepiece reticle, after the knurling, it has to taper into the body of the scope. And those are really the three things: the dust caps, the knurling, and the scope rings. Now, these scope rings are 3/4 of an inch scope rings, and they come with the scopes. There's no place you can really go unless someone has a bunch of these that are just loose. They were sold with the scopes. Scope rings actually one of the harder parts of this whole deal. Now, moving down, the scope mounts on this are pretty interesting. They're actually PVC pipe hangers. There's two different styles used on the blaster. One that sits in the rear is a clamp style, meaning you slide the pipe in and then you put a nut and bolt in there and tighten it down, and it tightens down onto the pipe. On the Empire Strikes Back EE-3, they use an Allen head, dome top Allen head screw with a nut and tighten it down. The front one is a snap style, meaning it snaps down over the PVC pipe and just holds it. That one is attached to the blaster kind of in a strange way. And how it's attached is they used a barrel extension, which is a micro flash made by the Micro Precision Company out of England. This one is not a micro flash. This one is actually a Highland flash. It has every single hole to be proper except for one, and I'm going to have to add that hole, but it's no big deal. And what they did was they marked it and put a screw from inside out going into the PVC pipe hanger. And if you look really close, you'll see they put threaded inserts in the pipe hanger to accept the screws that were coming out from inside of the barrel extension. And probably there was only rubber cement and the scope holding this in, because the master or the main body of the blaster is a rental, so they can't modify it any more than a little bit of rubber cement and that's about it. You can't damage it, or you have to buy it. Also, let's go down to greebles. There's a lot of greebles on this blaster. Let's start with the fact that there are 4 6-pin Molex connectors. There are 2 on each side, or 1 on each side of the scope mounts. That's that little box thing with the 6 holes hanging off the scope mounts. Well, there's 2 on the rear and 2 on the front. Now, Molex connectors are basically connectors you use to make wiring harnesses. They're still widely used today. If anyone's ever assembled a PC, there's a lot of Molex connectors inside of a PC. There is a large disc greebly right here in this area, 1 on each side, and it has a little raised round area in the center. We don't know what that is. No one's ever been able to identify that disc that sits right here. It's fairly large. It's about 1 inch round, but it sits right here, about 1.5 inches actually. Sits right here, and then sitting on top of that are 2 connecting rods, 1 on the left and 1 on the right. These connecting rods are part number 64, and they're from the Revell Visible Engine Kit. And moving on to the stock. On the stock, in the middle, on each side of the stock, there is a greebly that comes from a Unimax fail-safe switch. So what they did is they take this switch apart, pull all the connectors and all the little doodads out of the middle of it, and then they attached it to the stock on the left and right-hand side. And then sitting ahead of it and behind it on both sides are a UHF or VHF aerial plugs. Now, the UHF is 100%, I believe, identified as what it is. The plugs are a little bit different shaped. I think one has round and one has slotted. But to be honest, we haven't been able to perfectly identify all 4, so who's to say there isn't a VHF on there? The VHF, these plugs are so hard to find these days, and if you're going for authenticity, the VHF will probably work just fine anyway if you can't find any UHF aerial plugs. And I went down a rabbit hole on a lot of radio enthusiast forums. And this is old tech, so there wasn't a whole lot to find out. I was actually looking for someone that had a stash of these because I wanted to find some. There are 3D files that are very accurate. I believe there's some good scans of actual UHF and VHF plugs out there that work just fine on your 3D printers. And that is a quick breakdown of everything that they put together to build the Empire Strikes Back EE-3. I hope you learned a little bit. I've learned a lot on this project. I'm getting close to getting it done, and I can't wait to actually hold a finished blaster in my hands. Join us next time when we break down another cool prop and see what it's made of.